Welcome, everybody. It's Glenn and Dan here. He's on this side from Justin Haver and Associates Remax First. Hope you're all doing well. You know, we've had one full month of our real estate market in this crazy self-isolation, pandemic, COVID-19 era. It has affected things, and we're going to talk a lot about that. How are you doing today, Dan? Let's do it. Start with a high five. I think it's this side. There we go. I hope we got that right this time.
I don't know.
How's it going?
Find notes. I'm doing great, Glenn. Thanks for asking. It's just awesome to see you again. It's been a while.
Yes, we haven't seen each other in person for quite a while, so we'll get to that eventually, maybe as we go through the stages, which Dan's going to talk about in a minute. But, you know, we're going to put some organization to it this time. Today, and probably going forward, we're going to talk about 5 things that affect our real estate market throughout the month of April, and now we're in May, so we got 5 things to talk about. Dan's going to talk about which number, Dan?
Number 1.
All right.
Well, the first thing we're going to look at here is something that everybody's news feed is completely blown up with, is the fact that we now have a plan in place for the Alberta economy to start reopening. Stage 1, which they've released, they're saying as early as May 14th. So of course that's not a set in stone date, right? What we're looking at opening up and relaxing a little bit here are things such as retail businesses, some personal services are going to be reopening, museums, art galleries, and daycares with limited occupancy, the restaurants and pubs with 50% occupancy. So looking at potentially starting to do a bit of a restart here on the 15th. As far as ourselves are concerned, Glenn, with you and I working as realtors, we have been considered to be an essential service. Of course, I mean it doesn't take rocket scientists to realize the fact that things were going a little bit slower here in the market. It's going to be really interesting to see when this does all start. If this reopening plan is going to kickstart a few people's searches again, and how that's going to impact us. I mean, we'll speak a little bit here as well in regards to people scheduling showings and what that looks like. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see how this all works out, and it'll be interesting. I'm going to pass this over to you, Glenn, for your next interesting fact of the day.
All right, indeed. Thanks, Dan. And now on to number 2. There's a nice look at number 2 for you. So number 2, we're talking about the number of sales that we've actually had in the month of April this year versus last year. So again, no secret that it was down. And here they are. So the total number of sales for Calgary and surrounding area were 573 last month versus 1,544 the year before. In 2019. So that's a difference of about 63%. We're 63% down in sales. Now, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the individual numbers, and that is 340 sales were detached last year, 927. For apartments, there were 95 sales last month and 250 the year before. And finally, attached, which includes duplexes, townhomes, there were 138 sales last month versus 367. Pretty even there, and for the most part, Dan, looks like about 63%, almost 2/3, right, down from what we would usually expect. And what we're seeing, honestly, is that the inventory, it is down as well, which is great. It's just not down as much. So there's still going to be some downward pressure on those prices. And speaking of prices, do you want to talk about that next? Let's do it.
Yes. And this brings us to number 3. So number 3, we are going to discuss our changes in benchmark pricing for the different housing categories within the city of Calgary. Let's start out with detached. So looking at attached homes, last year we were sitting at $315,400 for a benchmark price. This year we're sitting at $307,400. So that is a decline of 2.5% on attached homes. Apartments, we dropped by 2%. So we started out last year, we were sitting at $249,800 as a benchmark price. We are this April of this year at 244,400. The smallest decline that we're seeing here is in detached homes. So looking at detached homes, last April we were sitting at a benchmark price of 484,200. We dropped down this April to 479,100, and that's a 1% decrease.
Yeah.
So Lynn, can you speak to a little bit about what's driven these decreases in the
Yeah.
market?
For sure. So there's no question we have some downward pressure on prices. Again, going back to that lower demand, about a third of the demand is normal, and not as much of a drop in inventory as we would like to see, even though there has been a drop. But also, so yeah, we just haven't seen price decreases yet. We know that the demand is lower, but price decreases can take time to really hit the market. And just to give you some great example, I mean, we were looking at average prices throughout the last month in April, and seeing a more significant difference, up to, I think it was like 8 to 10%, depending on the time of, this year versus last year. But we realize now, as we suspected, that it was really due to the lack of sales in the $600,000 and above category. So there's really those kind of sales have really dropped off. It's still the sales between 350 to 450. Those kind of things are still selling pretty good, and making up the core of the sales that we're seeing. A great example is the West District. I don't know if everybody realizes this, but the West District, includes areas like Aspen Woods, and in Calgary is the most, the highest priced kind of area out of all the other zones on average. Now, that's where we're seeing the most drop off. So not a surprise, because those homes are higher priced and they're just not selling as much as they were. And in contrast, you look at zones like South and Southeast, great areas there too, Mackenziestown, perfect example, Evergreen. And those are hot areas all the time, always turning over. And what we've seen there, if you look specifically for benchmark price changes, is virtually zero difference from pre-pandemic to current situation right now, still in the pandemic. So there's a lot of different elements there. And once again, we always say this, it's important to discuss with your real estate agent about pricing, that you look at your specific area and specific price bracket as well, because it's all very much different, Dan?
That is very true, Glenn. I mean, we've got these little housing bubbles all throughout the city, and some of them tend to perform a lot different than other ones. So
Yeah.
Very good points. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and so this is going to lead us into last. 4 is not last out of 5, it's the second last. All right, to point number 4, I wanted to talk about sale price to list price ratio, and I wanted to write out a good example of what's going on right now. Check this out. Ooh. I hope you can see this. Okay, so we got $400,000 home is the example. Now, last year in 2019, we were seeing the sale price to list price ratio hovering around 96.8%. So you apply that to 400,000, you get 387,200. And this year, we're seeing a modest difference, a better difference for buyers, anyways, at 95.8%. And that applied to the 400,000 gives you 383,160. Which is, again, a difference of 1%. Now, I hope everybody saw all those numbers there. But Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but that 1% difference that I just showed on the screen there, is that not the same as the 1% difference we're seeing of detached benchmark price from April last month to April last year?
Absolutely, it is. That's a great correlation, Glenn. And once again, these numbers aren't ones that can be used in every single situation, but gives us a really good idea of what's happening in a broad stroke all the way across Calgary.
Yeah, exactly. And it just shows that sellers are giving up a little bit more motivation. Nothing crazy, by the way. There's no fire sales going on. we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but so far, what we're observing is that, buyers are getting on average a 1% extra discount on those detached properties. But it's also the same for, all types of properties. The average is 1% difference of that sale price versus list price ratio.
Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah. All right. I guess we should talk about our final number. Do you have a beautiful number 5 written out there, Dan?
I will in 2 moments. Whether or not it's beautiful is going to be subjective, but number 5. All right. So a lot of people have asked, how did this all really affect us with COVID in our housing market? How did it affect the average consumer? And one great way of looking at that here in a visual is looking at our showing time stats. So showing time is our program that we use for booking showings on active listings. So we've got a graph here that's going to show us exactly how that was affected. If we can scroll down to that. So looking at these numbers here now, these are for Alberta, but Edmonton doesn't use this program. So for the most part, we are looking at Calgary and surrounding area. Looking at the orange line is 2020, the blue line being 2019. So looking at right where drop off was at on March 11th, when we really started clamping down on our restrictions here in society.
Sorry, Dan, I just got to interrupt you for 1 second. It really shows here like how in 2020 we were doing better for showing requests, people getting out there and looking at homes versus 2019 up until the pandemic, basically. So
yes, we were. It was looking like it was going to be a really hot spring here.
Yeah, but sorry, I'll let you continue.
At least in the housing market, if not outside.
Yeah.
So we saw a pretty fast dip happen there, which of course had a lot of people a little bit scared of what was happening. As we started proceeding through, we saw a couple of ups and downs. We really started to see things pick up here on the 17th moving forwards. We're starting to see a steady incline, and we expect to see those numbers continue in an upward trend here as the relaxations on our, on our social distancing, everything starts to slow down a little bit.
Yeah. That's a pretty good analysis there, and I think it's awesome to see that we're seeing some positive signs that people are maybe getting tired of waiting and getting out there and resuming their home search. A lot of people put that off, put their home buying plans off at the beginning when all this started happening. So we're gonna see people getting out there again. I, for one, Dan, this last 2 weeks here, I've been busier than I have been through the whole COVID-19 era so far. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been. I've had a lot of people coming out of the woodwork here who sort of postpone their plans, because the thing is that people's wants and needs for housing, they don't go away. They may just be postponed. So it's going to be interesting to see how this affects our spring market.
Yeah.
And potentially, if our spring market gets pushed off, at least partially, into our fall market, and it'll be really interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to seeing how things go. And I guess we proceed with caution, still with all of our safety measures and whatnot. But once again, the message is we are here to help you guys. One last thing I wanted to mention, Dan, was it is National First Responders Day. We at Justin Haver and Associates really appreciate our first responders all over the world. Thank you so much to everybody out there. You've done all the heavy lifting during this time, no question about it, and we will be forever thankful. So hats off to you. Until next time, guys, I suppose, Dan, we'll probably have another brief update here in another 2 weeks, since it's such a dynamic market right now.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, take care, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
The Bang Bang song is the level 9.
Okay, that's all you wanted to tell me?
Yeah.
The Bing Bang song is level 9. That's what
Nice.
it is.
Well, that can be number 6.